November 1943, a shattered airfield outside Foggia, southern Italy. The Luftwaffe's ground crews worked in silence beneath the low growl of distant engines. The last Heinkel had limped home with fuel leaking from bullet holes. Nearby, smoke drifted over a line of burned trucks, remnants of an American reconnaissance convoy ambushed the day before. In the midst of the wreckage sat something unfamiliar, a six-wheeled armored car, painted in fading olive drab. Its tires were intact, its engine unscarred. Two Luftwaffe mechanics, curious more than cautious, climbed aboard. One turned the ignition switch. The engine coughed once, then came alive with a deep mechanical growl that startled them both. They looked at each other. The sound was smooth, powerful, confident. German craftsmanship prized precision, but this felt different. It was not elegant, yet it worked perfectly. What they discovered inside that vehicle would redefine how they viewed war itself. By late 1943, the Luftwaffe was fighting a war it could no longer sustain. The battles of North Africa were lost, the Mediterranean skies belonged to the Allies, and the once confident German air arm was being hunted across southern Europe. Fuel shortages crippled training, spare parts vanished into thin air. Mechanics who had once maintained sleek Messerschmitts now scavenged from wrecks to keep even a few planes airborne. Across the sea, American industry was hitting its stride. Convoys poured into Italian ports, carrying trucks, jeeps, and a new breed of armored reconnaissance vehicle, the M8 Greyhound. Built by Ford, it was a six-wheeled scout car, lightly armored but fast, equipped with a 37-gun and a radio powerful enough to coordinate an entire column. Its mission was not to fight head-on but to move to see, report, and keep supply lines connected. Germany fielded its own reconnaissance cars, the Sonderkraftfahrzeuge 222 and 231 series, beautifully engineered machines of riveted armor and precision parts, but each required specialized tools and constant maintenance. Every unit seemed built differently, and every repair slowed the front. The M8, by contrast, was crude in appearance yet astonishingly practical. In American service, it filled every gap between infantry, armor, and logistics, a small, rolling link in a vast chain of mobility. That difference in philosophy was about to be revealed, not in a factory, but on a dusty Italian airfield. The mechanics who found the armored car were used to machines that reflected German pride, the hum of a Maybach engine, the precision of hand-fitted gears, the smell of fine lubricants blended for high-altitude aircraft. Yet when they opened the hood of the captured American vehicle, they froze. The layout was astonishingly simple, standard bolts everywhere, clearly labeled components. The electrical wiring used color codes. The fuel system was easy to reach, and the engine could be lifted out without special tools. One of them muttered that even an apprentice could service it. It looked almost civilian, more like a truck than a weapon. And that, they soon learned, was the point. The M8 Greyhound shared parts with countless American vehicles, trucks, jeeps, and tank transporters. The same tools fit them all. Its radial engine wasn't delicate, its armor wasn't complex, but it ran, and it ran everywhere. In the Wehrmacht, field repairs required trained fitters, factory manuals, and patience. In the U.S. Army, any soldier with a wrench could keep the wheels turning. The Germans built art, the Americans built systems. When the Luftwaffe officers arrived to inspect the find, they ordered the mechanics to test it. If it worked, they were to bring it to the depot. The men exchanged doubtful looks. The car looked too simple to be reliable. Minutes later, the vehicle rumbled forward through the dust, smooth, responsive, obedient. The lesson that began that afternoon would travel far beyond that airfield. By the way, if you're enjoying this deep dive into forgotten chapters of World War II, don't forget to hit subscribe and let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? I always love seeing the global community gather around these stories. The first thing the mechanics noticed was the suspension. 6 large tires, each with independent movement, glided over the uneven airfield like a boat on gentle water. The Germans were accustomed to complex torsion bar systems and precisely tuned axles, mechanical elegance that demanded skilled care. The American system looked crude by comparison, yet it absorbed punishment effortlessly. They crawled underneath to study the drivetrain. Everything was standardized, bolts of one size, fittings interchangeable across axles, gear housings that could be opened and resealed without shims or calibration tools. The transfer case engaged the 6-wheel drive through a single lever. No complicated linkages, no risk of misalignment. The more they examined, the more they realized. This wasn't a marvel of precision engineering. It was an engineering philosophy built around functionality, speed, and quantity. The M8's Hercules JXD engine, a 6-cylinder gasoline design, produced 110 horsepower, modest by German standards, but its accessibility was revolutionary. The oil filter sat in plain view. Spark plugs could be replaced in seconds. Cooling hoses, carburetor lines, and ignition wires all followed identical layouts across production models. It was a vehicle designed for mass maintenance, to be repaired in the mud, not in a factory bay. One of the Luftwaffe men recalled struggling for hours to align the drive shafts of a German Sonderkraftfahrzeug 222, a process requiring millimeter precision. The Greyhound's shafts looked almost industrial, unrefined, thick and resilient, yet they performed perfectly without vibration or noise. They began to understand the Americans didn't seek mechanical perfection. They sought operational permanence, a machine that could survive neglect, error, and rough handling and still function. By dusk, the German crew had dismantled half the interior, taking notes. Every discovery was the same: simple, effective, repeatable. For the first time, they started to wonder if simplicity itself was a weapon. At sunrise the next morning, they took the Greyhound onto the open road. The armored car moved faster than they expected, nearly 90 kilometers per hour on rough ground. The steering was light, the engine steady, the gearbox forgiving. It felt less like a war machine and more like a truck dressed for combat. The driver laughed in disbelief. "This shouldn't work this well," he said, his voice half awe, half resignation. The passenger checked the gauges, all functioning. Oil pressure, temperature, voltage, everything clean and stable. They hadn't tuned or serviced anything. It simply ran. They thought of their own supply columns, the endless mechanical failures, the delays waiting for specialized parts, the hours lost to precision alignment and hand machine components. Every German vehicle felt like a masterpiece, but every masterpiece required an artist to keep it alive. The Americans, they realized, had erased the artist entirely. Their vehicles were built for anyone. Soldiers, farmers, drivers, all could maintain them with the same tools. The entire army operated on a single mechanical language. A bolt removed from a truck could fit an armored car. An engine part from a generator could fit a Jeep. The simplicity extended beyond the machine. They saw American supply convoys on captured film reels, endless chains of identical vehicles stretching across continents. No unique parts, no custom requests. Every crate labeled the same way, every mechanic trained on the same procedures. The Germans had engineered excellence. The Americans had engineered endurance. As they parked the Greyhound back at the airfield, one mechanic said quietly, "It's not just the car, it's the system behind it." That thought lingered in their minds long after the engine cooled. Orders came the next day from Luftwaffe Command: take the vehicle on a full endurance test. Measure its range, handling, and reliability. The mechanics fueled it with standard aviation gasoline, a risk, but it worked flawlessly. The Greyhound roared down the dirt roads outside Foggia, its turret bouncing lightly, its engine note deep and even. They drove for hours through mud and stone, across terrain that would cripple half their fleet. The tires bit into soft earth without hesitation. The six-wheel drive engaged with a single pull of the lever, shifting from road to off-road without stopping. They pushed it harder, still it moved. No breakdowns, no overheating, no loose panels rattling free. At midday, they stopped to inspect. The engine bay was hot but clean. No fluid leaks, no cracked hoses. The oil remained clear. They exchanged glances. This was not a miracle of craftsmanship. It was a triumph of pragmatism. One of them recorded the data carefully. Fuel consumption, low. Acceleration, excellent. Maintenance, minimal. He paused before writing the last note. Suitability for mass production, ideal. They began comparing numbers. Germany had built roughly 2,300 armored scout cars by this point in the war. The United States was producing hundreds of M8s every month. This single machine could perform like this under field abuse. How many thousands were rolling off American assembly lines? The implications became impossible to ignore. Every Jeep, every truck, every Greyhound wasn't just a weapon, it was a logistical unit, a moving artery in a global network of steel and fuel. That afternoon, as the Greyhound thundered past columns of horse-drawn German wagons, the contrast was painfully clear. It wasn't power that would decide the war, it was motion. Their report traveled quickly through the maintenance chain, eventually reaching a technical officer stationed in Bari. He ordered a detailed comparison between the captured M8 and Germany's own Sonderkraftfahrzeug 231 series. The findings, written in precise military language, bordered on confession. The Greyhound required a fraction of the labor hours to produce. Its chassis came straight from commercial truck lines. Its steel plating, though thinner, could be stamped rather than hand-welded. Its mechanical tolerances were forgiving, its parts interchangeable, and its maintenance procedures written for soldiers with only basic schooling. In every measurable way, production speed, reliability, cost, and maintainability, the American vehicle outclassed its German rival. The officer attached a short note. it is evident that the United States has applied industrial scale to mobility itself. At headquarters, a senior Luftwaffe engineer read the report in silence. He'd spent his career designing aircraft components that demanded precision down to the micron. Now he held evidence that success in this new kind of war came not from precision, but from standardization. American production numbers confirmed it. By 1944, more than 8,500 M8 Greyhounds had been delivered to Allied forces, supported by millions of spare parts shipped worldwide. Germany's total output of comparable reconnaissance vehicles barely reached a few thousand. The Luftwaffe mechanics who had first driven the captured car saw the difference firsthand when Allied supply convoys passed through captured territory, hundreds of identical vehicles, each capable of replacing the last. Germany had the skill. America had the system. That realization struck deeper than any bomb crater. It meant the war was already being lost, not in the skies nor on the front lines, but in the factories, the depots, and the endless rhythm of supply trucks that never stopped rolling. Within months, captured Allied vehicles became a common sight in German depots. Each one told the same story. Whether a Jeep, a truck, or a Greyhound, they all shared a mechanical language built around ease and abundance. Luftwaffe mechanics began collecting parts and manuals, compiling quiet notes that read more like admiration than intelligence reports. They noticed how the Americans standardized everything: tire sizes, engine fittings, electrical systems, even the shape of fuel cans. In the Luftwaffe's workshops, every engine demanded a different wrench. In the American Army, one wrench fit nearly all. As Allied bombing intensified, Germany's logistics fractured. Supply trains were destroyed faster than they could be rebuilt. But the Allies, fed by an industrial machine that spanned continents, kept advancing. In every field, every road, new vehicles arrived faster than the Germans could destroy them. To the mechanics who had driven that armored car, the lesson was no longer theoretical. They had touched it, heard it, and driven it. They had seen the embodiment of a system that valued function over form, replication over refinement. And they understood, perhaps more clearly than their commanders, that this was how America was winning the war. When the Allies pushed north through Italy in 1944, the roads filled with the same vehicles the Luftwaffe mechanics had studied months earlier. Convoys of Greyhounds, Jeeps, and GMC trucks thundered up mountain passes, bringing food, ammunition, and fuel faster than the Germans could reposition. The speed of Allied logistics stunned German commanders. Divisions that should have been isolated were resupplied within hours. Tanks that should have been stranded kept moving. At captured airfields, the German ground crews watched in silence as American mechanics serviced entire fleets in a single afternoon. Crates of parts arrived on schedule, labeled, sorted, and distributed. There was no improvisation, only precision through repetition. The Luftwaffe's repair teams tried to replicate what they'd seen but lacked the tools, the parts, and the industrial base. The war that had once been about tactics and courage had become a contest of movement, fuel, and supply. The armored car they'd once driven now seemed less a machine and more a prophecy. It had shown them what the future of warfare looked like, not forged in the perfection of a workshop, but in the synchronized hum of an assembly line. When the war ended, many of those same Luftwaffe mechanics returned to a Germany reduced to rubble. The factories that had once produced masterworks of engineering lay silent. Yet, amid the ruins, they remembered what they had learned behind the wheel of that captured American armored car. They had witnessed the triumph of practicality over pride. The Greyhound had shown them that power was not measured in horsepower or armor thickness, but in the ability to build, maintain, and replace, endlessly. It was the realization that modern war was not won by brilliance in design, but by discipline in production. Years later, as West Germany rebuilt under the Marshall Plan, those lessons became the blueprint for its economic revival. Industry turned to standardization, efficiency, and export, the very principles that had defeated them. The Luftwaffe mechanics never forgot the feel of that engine, steady and unpretentious. It had been more than an armored car, it was a teacher. A reminder that in the machinery of total war, elegance is meaningless without endurance, and perfection is powerless without supply. In that dusty Italian field, they had driven the truth, and it would drive the future of Germany itself.